You're listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast, the podcast for communications professionals in the corporate world who are committed to advancing their work and our field's reputation as critical business advisors that are not only invited to the decision-making table, but are required there. I'm your host, Tara McDonough. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Communications Business Advisor. I'm your host, Tara McDonough, and I am here today with another Chief Communications Officer. As you know, I'm doing this whole series on the path to CCO. We want to know how they got there, what they're doing, what encompasses this communications organization. And on that note, I have an exceptional CCO leader here today with me that we're going to talk with and hear from. Libby May, who is the Chief Communications Officer at Southern New Hampshire University, which many people don't know, is the largest provider of nonprofit education in the United States. So it's a pretty large organization. And I'm going to welcome Libby to our show. I'm just going to ask you first a little, Libby, tell us a little bit about your organization and your role. Like, what do you do? What's the size of the organization? What encompasses your role?
Well, first, thank you for having me, Tara. You know, I use the old radio adage, long-time listener, first-time caller. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I am the Chief External Affairs and Communications Officer at Southern New Hampshire University. Both and yes. And as you said, we're the largest, or one of the largest, the numbers always change, but largest provider of nonprofit higher education in the country. We serve students both on campus here in Manchester, New Hampshire, but also online. We have about 200,000 learners and about 4,800 full-time employees. It gets a lot more when you start adding in our adjunct population, but a really big organization that's doing really great work.
Awesome. What encompasses that? Like, what areas of responsibility encompass all of your area of purview at SNHU?
Yeah, so our communications arm includes our internal and external, so PR and media relations, but also all of our internal communication. My team also includes our events group, our government relations team, donor relations, alumni engagement, and community relations. So it's a really big group that really encompasses a lot of areas.
Wow. Tell us, what's that size of the team?
So our communications team has about 30 folks on it, a variety of skill sets, really strong, amazing team. And then across the whole external affairs team, it's about 65.
Okay, great. I know that there's a ton of people drooling over size of team combos. The poor people out there who tell me that their comms teams of like 2.
We are really lucky in that way, yes.
You are lucky, but you're also large. So it kind of makes sense, right? So one thing that's interesting for some people, and I think is an ideal way of setting up a function for communications, is that your role, communications, corporate affairs, it's separate from marketing. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I listed off the areas that are under the Office of External Affairs and Communications, does not include marketing here at SNHU. And that's really intentional on our part. We have a chief marketing officer. Her and I work hand in hand. We share a wall actually in our office. So we work really closely together. Our teams work really closely together, but the functions are separate. And that's because our drivers, our deliverables are different in this industry, right? They are recruiting students. They are getting students in the door. We are telling the story of SNHU. We are helping the university navigate the external environment, regulation, policy, all those other influences. You know, we always talk about our events and our alumni engagement and our donors, and it's this collective look of how people feel about the university. How people feel about the university certainly influences marketing and how people, people coming in the door, but it's not solely in marketing. So those functions are different because they have different drivers. Students and enrollment is one driver. How people feel and that reputation of the university has some different elements that drive it. So we do and have always had them intentionally separate at SNHU. And I agree with you. I think in a nonprofit but still we are a nonprofit organization, but we still have customers, right?
Hmm.
Our students, our learners are our customers. And I think having those two functions separate in our industry really makes a lot of sense.
It does make sense to have them together at certain points. And I think critical drivers can be, size of organization, financial size of the organization. I think another driver on whether they should be separate or not is how much regulation plays into the issues of the day and what's going on publicly connected to your industry. And I also think that it can be about, I tend to find that again, B2B is more likely to separate the marketing function from the communications function because reputation connected to regulation is such a critical thing. And when you're looking at fields like energy, insurance, healthcare, education, they're all highly regulated industries. Also, large, complex nonprofits that need to operate like a business. So that's where higher education comes in. Some health insurance example, many Blue Cross Blue Shield plans are nonprofits, which most people don't know. Things like that. Those are organizations where it makes sense, I think, to separate marketing and comms. That said, I'm not the panacea owner of the decision on this, and every organization is somewhat different. Otherwise, again, it would be boring. But I agree with you that in an industry like yours and in a organization of your size and complexity, it makes a whole lot of sense to separate the two.
Yeah, I think those components you hit on are really important, that nonprofit and heavily regulated.
Mm,
And that's why it's important that we sit with our government relations team, right? Those
yep,
pieces have to go hand in hand in our industry. That does not mean that we don't work really closely with our partners in marketing. Like I
right.
said, I was just having a conversation about this with our CMO 2 days ago. Like I said, we
Right.
share a wall. Our teams work really closely together. And in fact, when her and I were talking, we were talking about what respect we have for each other's role and what each of our
Yes.
teams bring to the table. And that's important. So while they sit separately, just like legal, just like HR, all those functions, you have to be really connected with them. But I find when marketing and communications are separate for the right organizations, it is absolutely the right fit. For us, it is absolutely the right fit. But you still have to work really closely with them and you still have to have those deep relationships within those teams.
Right. Because we are talking with other people in this series where marketing is connected into comms. And for those organizations, it might make sense. So it's not sort of like this is the answer, the prescription, like everything else. We need to walk into this as like, what is the business? What is the model? What are the skills required? What are the business goals needed? What are the complexities that you're dealing with? So that's why I say, what's the right model? Well, it depends, and I'm not being cute about that. It truly depends. But tell me, Libby, who do you report to? And was it always this way, or how did it change?
I report directly to the president of the university, and I have always reported to the president of the university. We recently had a presidential change, but my reporting lines directly to the president have not changed over the years.
Okay. Again, I hear some people in the background drooling. I'm speaking with peers at your level in different industries like consumer goods, energy. One thing that's consistent across all of them is our conversation about being critical business advisors rather than what I know I call them communications waitresses. Tell us about how this shows up in the higher education space and how comms plays a critical role in this space right now.
Communication, waitress, deli counter, as you always say,
Mm,
it exists everywhere, and it's no different in higher education. And I think, so that you're always going to have to manage some of that within an organization. I always tell our team that you are only as effective as people want to work with you.
mm,
That does not mean that you have to be a waitress or work at the deli counter. In fact, I think that means that you have to make the case and show communications as a strategic driver within the organization. But that means listening to folks, understanding what they want, what they're trying to get, what are their goals,
mm,
and helping them see your role in that.
mm,
Then they'll want to work with you. People want to be heard, people want to be listened to. So sit down and listen to them. Talk to them
mm.
about what they're trying to achieve. Who's their audience? Where do they want them to be? Because when you create space for them to be heard, and they want to work with you. Oh, well, Libby really listens to what I'm trying to accomplish, and then she comes back with the strategies. I also
Mhm.
think the communication waitress approach is often, people will come and say we need a press release. That's because that's all they know about our industry, right? They
Right.
ask for a press release because they know a press release. They say they want to be in the New York Times because they read the New York Times. But often, if you sit down with them and build that relationship and that connection with them and help them see that you're in this work with them, you're part of the work and you want to help drive their goals as well, then they go, oh, and you show them how you want to get there, you know, what else exists, like beyond what else exists beyond a press release. So, well, yeah, okay, we want to reach this audience. You want to achieve this outcome. You think you want a press release, but have you thought about and
Right.
kind of plant the seed and be in conversation with them and bring them along because then they want to work with you. So we're
Right.
only effective if people want to work with you. That does not mean you have to be a waitress, but that means you have to build connection with
Mm.
people, build trust, help them see what could be, let them know that there's a world in communications beyond a press release.
Right. I think that's important because people often lead with the tactics when it comes to comms because that's what they know, to your point, but it's not necessarily what they want. They don't know how to ask for what they want.
I always say that people, we always have to battle the fact that anyone who's written an email or read the New York Times, they think they know what communications is.
Yeah.
And that's not, I mean, that's just what they think. And so it's really about building those connections and building that trust so that they can see, oh, communications is so much deeper than that. It is that strategic driver that we want them all to see us
Right.
as. That's the world that they know. They think they know this piece of it. And once you can show them and demonstrate what's possible and that you're
Right.
really listening to them and trying to understand what they want, you can really build those connections and that trust. And that really helps, I think,
Right.
kind of get out of waitress mode.
Yeah, meet them where they are and bring them along to like where you know they want to be, which is actually achieving the goal, not getting a press release out the door. And them seeing you as a partner in that, not a service provider in that. And I think that's key. Everyone I know is so curious about the higher education space right now who lives in the comms world. There's been a lot of news out there about different administration decisions or actions that are happening that will affect the higher ed space. And so I imagine comms plays a critical role at the table, comms in public affairs and government affairs and leading that. Those are in under your purview. Would you say that's an accurate representation of some things that are top of mind for you right now? And if not, what else is top of mind for you in the higher education space when it comes to comms?
I think the current external environment is very much top of mind for us and for, as you noted, any higher education institution right now. There's lots of higher ed in the news. I always remind people that we are, a regulated industry. We are
Hmm.
regulated by, the Higher Education Act. We are regulated by state, different decisions within the state and state regulations. So we are a regulated industry, and there has certainly been a lot of conversation around higher ed. There's always been the conversations around, the value of higher ed and, is higher education worth it? And then we've seen, a shift in some of the higher ed conversations more recently, and particularly, policies and decisions and things playing out very publicly recently in higher education. So I think that's definitely influenced how people in higher education communications think about the work. We made the shift to be an external affairs office about 18 months ago.
Mm,
And I'm really glad that we did because I think we're even better prepared to handle the external environment we're in now
mm,
because we do sit side by side with our government relations team
mm,
and we are informed of what's happening and we're keeping an eye on things. We also work really closely with our legal team, but I think having communications and, public affairs, government relations in one team right now, particularly in our industry, is really important. And so we have an arm that's really keeping an eye on what's happening. So we're not caught flat-footed on things. We're ready to respond
mm.
um, to changes that we're seeing in the industry. But it is a hard it's a very hard time
Yeah.
in higher ed communications because it is always changing. You never know what headline's going to pop up.
I think what you shared is important there, Libby, how and this is something I'm a big advocate for, particularly when you reach a certain level in an organization, having comms functions all connect, internal PR, government affairs, even events, things like that, that are all under one purview because they all do impact one another and different levers can support and help one another. And I also see this most in regulated industries, this type of model. And that makes a whole lot of sense to me. So if you're in insurance or you're in healthcare or you're in energy, this is the kind of model that makes a whole lot of sense. And in my view, this is something where, and I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again, where I think B2B can lead the way for B2C and you're a B2C model. So I love that this is a model that is working and kind of I'm like, yeah, see what I said? It does work. Um, B2B should be leading the way here, and B2C is doing the same thing now. So I love that. I'd love to shift the conversation a little bit to hearing a little bit about how you got your role. Like, did the position already exist and you found your way into it, or you were promoted into it, or did you advocate for the position or the title? How did you get where you are?
So my position, well, my current position of external affairs is, as I shared, relatively new. I came into the university as an SVP of communications
Hmm.
about 10 years ago, and the role did not exist.
Oh, wow.
There were communication pieces scattered throughout the university. So you may have someone who is doing press releases for a certain team or handling internal messaging for a specific team. But there was no centralized communications function. And I met the president of the university at the time, Paul LeBlanc, through some work I was doing. I was actually at a agency at the time.
Mm,
And Southern New Hampshire University was one of my clients,
okay.
and I
Yeah.
was doing some work on telling student stories and talking about the time about competency based education and how this new model could help students. And I was doing that work largely through storytelling. And I
Hmm.
met the president and we'd work together. And he at some point said to me, I think we need someone who does your kind of work at the university. And through conversation, really helped shape the position with him. I joke that he sent me a job description and he asked me for my feedback. And I sent it back, Tara, bleeding on the page. I redlined it everywhere because,
I was
you
just
know,
gonna say,
he didn't quite, have it right at the time of but he knew he needed something to do this or to do this kind of work. And so, I did really work with him to shape it. And then I did interview for the role and eventually did get the role of SVP of communications, but it was new. And the university, there's been a lot of work. I've been here for 10 years. And over the years, it has evolved. My role has evolved. And it's been a lot of, centralization and bringing in pieces to build this kind of more cohesive team because we did have comms kind of scattered across the university. And, there was no one voice of the university. And
hmm,
so that was how the role came to be is he said, God, we really need to do a better job telling our story. And I said, well, you're never going to do that if if everyone can put out a press release and everyone can put out messages, you're never going to be able to tell one great story about the university. And
right,
there's so much great stuff here. I've been here for 10 years and there's so much good stuff. There's never a lack of a good story to share from this university, but you were never going to get there if it was scattered everywhere. And you were never going to get there without a communications person with a seat at the table.
right,
So, in my helping to create the role, I advocated for that with the president and said,
right,
you need a centralized function and you need that person to have a seat at the table. So I advocated for it from the start and
right.
understanding, where they were and where he really wanted to take communications for the university. So we really kind of built it together and the position has continued to evolve over my 10 years. What has fallen into this office has changed as recently as 18 months ago.
Right. More and more and more because, and I happen to know this about Libby, by the way. my friend listeners, because Libby and I work together. She is one of my consultant clients. So I knew some of this, but I'm learning along with all of you today. So this is exciting for me. And then how did it get to your most recent promotion? How did that come about?
So we had a presidential change. Our president stepped down after 21 years at the university, and we had a new president take the reins, Lisa Marsh Ryerson, and her and I had a conversation, and I shared, some of my observations. I shared some of the ways I've seen communications evolve at the university. As I look back, I can note almost specific things over the years that caused major shifts in how we think about communications. And I shared all that with her, and I said almost exactly what you shared, Tara, that idea that, you know, when all these functions can sit by side, it's even more effective, right? In this industry where we are regulated, where, all of our students have access to social media, where all of our alumni are still part of our community, when how people feel about us in our own backyard and our community relations, all of that influences and builds that reputation for SNHU. It's not just communications. And,
Right,
communications is a big part, but all these other pieces have to be part of that narrative as well. All of
right.
that informs how people feel about the university. And her and I sat down and had a really great conversation. We've continued to have wonderful conversations. She continues to be a great advocate for this work. And she said, "You're right. I see this vision. I see exactly what you're
Hmm.
talking about." And she supported, bringing together. So we took the presidential change as an opportunity to kind of bring some more of these pieces together, again, to really continue as we have over the last 10 years, evolving and changing and always keeping focus on our mission, both as a university and our mission as a team, to really
Mm.
tell the story of SNHU and tell a holistic and, authentic story about SNHU. So, she was a huge supporter of, and I'm very lucky that I've worked with not one, but two presidents at the university who have seen the value in communications. And our current president, saw that vision that you spoke to of like all these pieces need to fit together.
Right. It seems like an ongoing evolution where it all made sense. It's like you shaped the job together with the president, which is exactly what I think we want communicators to have the capacity to do. To say, no, yeah, no, I'm not taking a job as VP. Like it needs to be SVP and it needs to be like at the table. It needs to be reporting to you or like it needs to, all of the needs in order to actually make it work and being able then to walk away if it won't, which is critical. And then, the evolution of, and I think this is something that even my audience, they get confused about when I say chief communications officer, I'm encompassing like all of what I see as a corporate communications function, like PR, internal comms, yes, executive comms, yes, but then also like public affairs and community relations and corporate citizenship and events management and all of the things. So it's almost like I don't care if people call it chief affairs officer or corporate communications officer. I just want everything to connect and have it all make sense. Like make it make sense, people. Like this should all be the left hand should be talking to the right.
Yeah. And I think a huge part of communications for me is being able to be authentic, right?
Hmm.
Communications have to be authentic. And I think when all those pieces come together, you're helping to make the story that much more authentic, right?
Mm.
Because it's not just one piece of it. It is external, it is internal, it's mixternal, which everyone's using these
Oh
days.
yeah,
We
the new
always say,
term.
everything internal is external, especially with so many students and so many employees. Everything internal here is external.
Right.
But how that is influenced and shaped by the policy environment, how that's
Hmm.
influenced and shaped by social media. We have
Hmm.
200,000, over 200,000 learners. They're
Right.
all social media, and
Right.
how they're interacting with the university, how they're talking about us, all these things. The pandemic shaped internal communications. All these things have are outside external affairs that
Right.
shape communications. And so I think it is really important that you and your audience feels comfortable sitting in some of those spaces that are beyond what some might think of as traditional communication.
100%. Be a business advisor first. Think about everything from the
Yes.
business perspective. Learn what you don't know. That's one of the beautiful things about this field is that you're consistently learning because right when you've mastered something, there's something new to learn. How would you describe the reputation of communications at SNHU and how are you or the team treated?
So I think, the reputation of our team is good. There's always room to grow, right? There's always room to
Oh, I
build those
hear the
connections.
perfectionist overachiever in you talking right now. Hi, how are you? I'm the mirror over here that can see you. I'm the same. Keep going.
But I think generally, the reputation of our team is really good within the organization. I think, I know this series for you is about the seat at the table. I think the seat at the table is important to how our team is viewed. But even more so, I think it's to what I shared, just a few minutes ago of you're only effective if people want to work with you. And
Yeah,
so building those connections and letting people, making sure people know that you're here to listen to them and that you want to help them
right.
advance their business goals is the number one way to build your reputation internally.
Hmm.
Listen, be a partner and build those connections because through that connection, you get trust. And
Right.
that trust from your business partners is what's going to help your reputation. So I think our team reputation is really good. I give all the credit in the world to my amazing team that has heard me say over the years we're only good if people want to work with us, and
Right.
they take that to heart and they are really great partners with our colleagues. And so I give our team reputation a lot of credit because of how strong my teammates are as they meet and work across the university.
I agree with that. I think that people want to work with people they like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you have to be likable. That doesn't mean you have to bend to be who they are or what they want. It means you got to show up as a genuine person. And instead of seeing the person on the other side of the table, they're sitting next to you and you're working
Exactly.
together to solve a problem or achieve a goal or, deal with an issue. And where I think many communicators have been challenged in the past is either they fall into that order taker mode of like, well, that's what they want. And so they're my client and I will do it that way, which, I have an issue with that term. We're partners, not clients. But then others go down the path of kind of almost a chip on the shoulder of like, how dare you ask me for a press release? That's not what you need. Ugh, you don't even get what I do. And as much as you guys might like enjoy my snarky commentary about this on LinkedIn and we all bond over this, no one knows what we do. That's just for us guys. Like that's not for them. That's just like to let it out so we're not showing up that way with our peers. Show up and be human and be likable and see them as like the person sitting on the park bench next to you where you're gonna like address the topic instead of somebody that's sitting on the opposite side of a table during like a divorce proceeding where you're like battling for who gets the dog. That's not the goal here, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a really important qualifier to say being likable and being someone who people want to work with does not mean you have to be a waitress. Does
Hmm.
not mean you have to deliver exactly what they're asking for and
Hmm.
be that order taker. It means that they have to want to bring you into a meeting because you're going to listen and you're going to help them, get where they want to be with their work. And that you're going to be someone who's going to, be collaborative and work with
Right.
them. Like it doesn't mean, and I think it's a really important qualifier because people do often hear that and say, oh, I've got to be the order taker. Nope. You can be likable and you can be easy to work with. And once you are, you build that trust. And that makes it easier when you do have to deliver something to say, no, I I hear that you want this. I'm going to recommend this strategy. Or when you have to be even harder, because sometimes you do have those conversations where you do have to be more direct
Hmm.
and say, I simply do not recommend that strategy,
Yeah.
and this is why. And those conversations are easier though
When you know the
if
people and they
when you
like
know the
you.
people and they built that trust with you, right? Like
Right.
trust is huge in our industry. It's the same thing.
100%. Yeah.
Reporters have to trust us. Our colleagues have to trust us.
I entirely agree with that. So this is maybe, well, it's one of the toughest questions. This is not a question. It's an action. How did you or do you advocate for budget and resources?
Budgets are difficult at every organization. I think with evidence and preparation. And evidence and measurement is hard in communications,
Hmm.
particularly, but being able to gather what measurement and evidence you can and being prepared to speak to that. There are times where I've had to advocate for new roles on our team. I know you talked about the size of our team would be envy, would bring
People will
out
be
envy
envious.
in
Yeah.
many. Yeah.
Mhm.
And but we've advocated for roles. And what we've done is say, these are the number of asks we're getting. These are the holes we're seeing. This is the opportunity or potential. Really lay it out for folks as best we can in an industry where measurement is hard, and just being prepared for those conversations. A lot of times I'll think about, oh, what are the questions I'm going to get? What is my
Yeah.
executive team going to ask me about this budget request or this position request? And I'll kind of prepare for those questions that, I like to prepare, but I'll run through
Yes.
those questions and I'll be ready to speak to it and speak to it in language that will resonate with them.
Right. Know
I'm
your
not going to
audience.
talk about it from, right. Number one rule of communications is know your audience. And it's no different at the executive table.
Right.
Know your audience. They are an audience for me. My fellow executives are one of my audiences. And
Right.
I have to always be thinking about how to talk to them about something. And it's probably one of the best things I think I can bring back to my team as well, which is sometimes coaching them on how to talk to an executive and say, oh, this, our CFO is really focused on these things and these measures. So make sure as you're talking through the reasoning for something, make sure you kind of hit on those points so that they can draw those connections. They can see the reasoning in their head. So yeah, your executive team is an audience just like any other, so you have to know how to talk to them.
Mm. Speaking about measurement and advocacy for what you need and how measurement is hard, I'm going to ask maybe the hardest. This is the hardest question. So I'm going to say it because it has stumped many people. One of the biggest challenges in our field is measuring what never gets shared. These are the things that are never communicated because either we are at the table to advise, in other words, like the power of our counsel to prevent the crisis or accomplish the goal in a way that wouldn't have happened if we weren't there. How do you suggest our colleagues out here go about measuring the power of our counsel?
Tara, that is the toughest question in our industry. As you were asking it, I immediately thought of one of my colleagues here who always says, Libby's had a hard day if you don't hear from her. If we're
Ah,
not in the news, if you don't hear of something, it's probably been a really long day for
that is
Libby
a
and her
measure of
team.
success.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think about that often, and they have shared that with other colleagues, and I always think that's a helpful talking point. And so, I think it is difficult because there are so many elements of our work that aren't seen, and truly some of our hardest days or our busiest days are the days when you won't see things kind of
Hmm.
being produced or coming from our team. But I think you try to measure where you can. We have intake forms and tracking for certain projects. We try to tack on to surveys. We do a lot of surveys. We are always listening to particularly our employees, but also our learners and our students. But internally, we have surveys and we're asking our employees for feedback. What are their top ways of getting information, or how much do they know about a certain topic? So we're always getting that data, and that of course helps. The other thing I'd say is don't be afraid to take credit even where you can't measure. And I think it's
Mm.
something that communicators have a hard time with. We are often the hardest of telling our own stories and
Yeah.
promoting ourselves. And I think, you know, a lot of times I'll be in conversations with folks. And I say, well, we can't really say that because maybe we, and I said, go ahead and say it. Take credit for that.
Hmm.
Say we helped the university navigate X, Y, and Z because we did A, B, and C.
Right.
Take credit for it. Even if
Yep.
there isn't a measurable thing, say it out loud. It's okay because even without a percentage increase or a tracking of projects or a mention in a major publication, the influence is there. And the
Right.
work has shaped it. And so I think in our industry, we are often hesitant to say and take credit for some of those things. And so I have to encourage my colleagues, no, take credit for it.
Right.
Talk about some of the unseen work. I think we need to talk more about all of the work that goes into things you don't see.
Right.
Yeah, I would say talk about it.
I have so much to share on this, so much so that I'm going to put a little plug in here that I can't fit it all here. So if you get my level up emails, I'm going to be sending out a level up email after this episode with Libby that talks a little bit about like how do you measure the immeasurable. And it's just some ideas and concepts that I've gathered through my own corp com career and that I've gathered from people like Libby in our conversations working with my clients on, and is it a panacea? No. But hopefully it will help some people out there. And I entirely agree with everything you said. We're, I think, often afraid of being caught, quote unquote, in quotes,
Yes.
but so much of our work is art as much as it is science. And there is some, use the science where you can and claim the art because it's beautiful. What we do here in council, it is just gorgeous and chef's kiss on preventing a crisis or handling a situation where you're saving the company millions and helping the organization move through a challenge before it becomes a crisis. That's just like the unspoken, unsaid, most critical part, I think, of the work that we do. It's the protection of the brand.
Right. The days when you don't hear
When you hear
from our
nothing,
team are
yep,
probably some of the days we've worked the hardest.
right,
And I'm grateful I have a colleague who acknowledges that, who's not in comms. And I think it's a really true statement for our industry. The days when you don't hear from us are the days we've worked the hardest.
yep, yep,
And I think you're so right. We don't take the time to say like, yeah. And that point of, well, if it doesn't have a number, like, oh, I can't, that perfectionist, you want to be able to say, and it's like, no, just say it. Just say that we did that. Say,
right.
celebrate it.
Because we get criticized for not being math people, right? Like you got into comms because you love words, because you love writing, because, you were a journalist or you were interested in communicating with people. But like we all have to learn math and comms because we have to report financial earnings, press releases, and like we have to understand where the money's coming in. And we have to understand that's a big tip I have for people. Like you need to learn the business of the business in order to truly be a really great comms leader. That said, we then get nervous and shy away from like sharing anything that doesn't have a number associated with it. And I think that some of the qualitative stuff we can share is some of the most powerful.
But I agree with your statement of know your business. One of my greatest things I think I've done to advance my career was earn my MBA.
Yay. Nice. I think you're the first. I may have talked to a couple of other MBA folks and maybe we didn't cover it, but that is super interesting and helpful to know. Why an MBA and not more like masters in comms or something, or masters in external affairs or something like that?
Yeah, so I earned my MBA while working here at Southern New Hampshire University,
Mm-hmm.
and it has been, I believe, one of the best things I've done for my career.
Mm.
It has helped me, to your point, know the business and learn how to talk about business, how to read financial statements, how to process the business side. My focus was actually in nonprofit management, which
Mm.
working at a large nonprofit, that has also been really informative. I would also add that, because I got my MBA at Southern New Hampshire University, I also know the experience of our learners. I've been in the classes, which has also really helped inform how I think about communications to our learners because I was one.
Mm.
I am an alumni. I know that audience really well. So it really helped me also from a comm side understand our audiences. But that MBA really taught me a lot of the business pieces that I needed to learn in order to be that business partner and that strategic driver. And it gave me the language to talk about it, gave me the
Mm.
confidence to talk about it. You talked about, in comms or doesn't don't do the math. Oh, we're in comms because we don't do math. We don't like math. I had to do math, and
Yeah.
I and it And so it gave me a lot more confidence to be in those conversations
Yeah,
and see myself as a business partner.
that's cool. That's a good story. On that note, though, of skills that you think you need to be a great comms person and grow into a role like yours, what are some of those things that you need to know or you need to be good at outside of being an expert in the field of communications?
I think being an expert outside of communications is exactly one of the things you need to be. Our president often says to me, "You're a systems thinker." I can think about the systems across the university. She says, "You're a systems thinker, you're an executive of the whole." Because in communications, we have to know all of our audiences. We
Right,
can't know just one specific area. I often say, in communications and external affairs, we're like the air traffic controllers. We know all the planes that are flying, and we know, okay, we got to land this one right now, and oh, that one's taking off tomorrow, and we got to know this one's experiencing turbulence. We're the air traffic controllers of our organization. And so you have to be a systems thinker. You have to be able to process a lot of inputs
hmm,
and help think through prioritization and be able to speak to that. So it's really, I think you
yeah,
have to be a systems thinker, an executive of the whole. And you do that by building skills outside of communications. Like I said, I think earning my MBA was a big component of that. I had to get really smart in areas that weren't my area of expertise in
mm,
order to earn that degree. And I did. And I learned so much. And I think the other thing is you have to get a lot of experiences, right? You have to learn. I've been in house, I've been at firms, I've
right,
done PR, I've done internal. You have to get so many experiences so that you can really understand all of the components that go into communication. So it's like you have to, I don't know, you can't be specialized in just one area of communications. You really have to understand all of the components and how they all fit together.
yes. I used to say when I would take a role from moving that would seemingly seem like a sideways move from like internal comms into PR or the opposite or into public affairs, I'm growing sideways to grow up, is how I would describe it, because I wanted to
Yeah.
know enough about all of the different areas in order to speak about it confidently and competently when I got to that more senior level.
Yeah, I think that's, and I think, you asked what are the skills that are critical for someone, that
Hmm.
openness to learn, the
Yeah,
willingness to try something new, right? We've brought in all these new areas to my team. I have not been an expert in all of these areas, but I was willing to learn
right.
and listen to my colleagues and learn from them and learn with the organization. So I think that willingness to learn and try something new is really important.
So many people in our field are naturally curious, and this is what got
Yes.
us into this field. Some of our, our curiosity about like how to tell a story and how to package things and like learning more, right? So put that to work for yourself and growing your own
Yeah.
career.
It's why, a lot of reporters make really great communicators, right? They're
Yep.
naturally curious. They know to ask a good question and how to tell a
Hmm.
story and how to take a lot of input.
And know what the right stuff is.
Right. Know what the right stuff is, know what you need to prioritize. I think those skills are really important in this industry because
Mm,
there's a lot of input right now.
right. I happen to know that your comms team, I have an inside track on this. Hint, hint. I'm the as the comms partner with you on this. I happen to know your comms team is evolving and changing. Tell us a little bit about how you're looking at this and tackling the work, and what do you think others could learn from your approach?
So the team and the office has evolved, as I've said, over my 10 years here at the university,
Hmm.
right? And grown, right? It was just me 10 years ago. And now it's this much
Oh,
larger
wait,
team.
pause on that for a second because I want everyone to know that to hear that, okay? She's talking about her large, to some of you, large team. When she started 10 years ago, she was a team of one. Remember that, folks. Remember that. You are not like, I don't want you guys looking at her with jealousy of like, must be nice. She grew this from one. Okay. Keep that in mind. Okay. Keep going, Libby. Sorry for that interruption.
No, and it's an important point, right? Like just keep working on it, keep making the business case. I mean, you can get there and you can bring folks along. on how comms is a strategic driver, truly. And you and I have talked about this. I'm such a big proponent of that. But yes, it was a team of one. And it has evolved over the years. And, like I said, we had comms kind of scattered across the organization, and we've centralized and centralized. And, that has come with some struggles over the years, right? But we've centralized and centralized, and the organization has continued to see the benefit of
Mm.
that, which is
Hmm.
great. But it also means that you've centralized and you kind of just, the circle's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And as I've shared, we had a presidential change 18 months ago.
Hmm.
We have a new strategic plan with new leadership, a new strategic plan for the organization. And myself and my colleague Lauren Keene looked across our team and said, this is a great time for us to say, what is being asked of our team and where do we want our team to go? We
Mm.
have a new leader, we have a new strategic plan. We know we're getting clarity on where the university wants to be in the next 5 or 10 years. Let's
Hmm.
make sure we've got the comms function built to support that growth and built
Hmm.
to support the needs of the university. It was a great time for us. A
Yeah.
change of leadership and a new strategic plan is a great time to say, time out, let's stop, let's have some conversations. And that's, I think, one of my biggest learnings was be in conversation
Right.
with your team and with your colleagues to understand, what's your team managing? What are they seeing? What are their thoughts, right? Get their feedback. And then also talk with your colleagues and say, where do they see? What are the opportunities they see?
Yes.
And merge those two together. And it was a really great time for us to, slow down and listen, and, an opportunity for us to think about the organization in a holistic way and
Yeah.
say, let's make sure we're building the comms team, because particularly we're focused on the communications function of the external affairs
Hmm.
with the work we're doing, that is built to scale and built to support the organization we want to be 5 or 10 years from now.
Right.
So it's been really great work. And I think the biggest takeaway is to slow down and listen and take the time to do the work.
Yes.
And it takes time. And that's not always easy. Time is not always an easy thing to find. But I think when you ask, what do others learn from the approach? You don't do this kind of work overnight.
Hmm. Yes.
And bring people along in your conversation. Don't do it just in your head, right? Bring people along with
Yeah.
you, bring the team along. I have learned so much from listening to my team on this.
Yes. This is my entire approach.
Well, I'm glad we took the right things away from your.
This has been, I think that part is important. Like, know the trigger points too, right? Like, do you know what your organization wants to be when it grows up or grows up further?
Yeah.
When you get that focus and direction, it's a great time to relook at team structure, team scope, what you want to be when you grow up to align with the organization, change in leadership. These are great triggers for looking at your own team. Now, I'm going to get to just a couple more questions. I have so much to talk about with you. With the changing business environment, the changing technologies, political environment, if there's one thing consistent, we know it's change. What do you see as the top challenges and opportunities for our field and the people in it?
Well, as you said, change is a constant, and particularly in our industry, everything's always changing. The external world is changing. We've in our conversation, we've highlighted a few moments that I think really changed and shaped how we thought about communications at this organization. And I think, the changing business environment, changing technologies, the political environment, all of that is influencing our industry. I think obviously the big one people focus on right now is AI and technology and how that's going to
Hmm.
shape our industry. And, you know, somebody said in a meeting, actually on our communications team, that, they think of AI tools as kind of their intern.
Yes, that was a post I wrote. So your team, I know they follow me, but like tell them to give me some kudos on that.
But, AI and technology is really a tool for communicators, right? It's not going to replace communicators, but it's definitely a tool, and we need to learn how to use it. And every day I'm learning new ways that people are using it. I just had a conversation just a few days ago with a woman who works really closely with our HR team, Jenna Murphy on our team. I know you've worked with her a little
Yes.
bit. She shared with me that somebody had recorded their remarks for an upcoming presentation and put it into ChatGPT for feedback,
Mm,
for tone, for clarity, and it gave her a summary. And I thought it was such an interesting tool. And so every day we're finding new ways to put our AI interns to work and improve our work, but it's not going to replace communications. And I think as AI and technology evolves, I think we as communicators need to focus even more on what we call at SNHU the heart work.
mm,
AI can help with brainstorming or drafting or giving feedback on a presentation, but it doesn't have reasoning skills.
right.
It doesn't have empathy. It doesn't have, it doesn't have judgment. So I think increasingly we should, as an industry, embrace AI for the tools that it can give us.
Right.
And we, as communicators, need to focus even more on our heart work, those human skills that are needed in our industry.
That makes so much sense because I know there's some level of fear and some level of excitement over AI. It is not the end all be all. And it reminds me a little bit of like, when I was in college when like the internet took off essentially. And so it's sort of like that changed how we did things, but it still required humans, right?
I was in a meeting the other day where someone referred to it as like the evolution of like spell check. Remember when spell check became a thing? And then I was like,
Yeah,
oh, wait, it's like these tools and you have to learn how to work with them, but they don't replace.
they don't
It's
replace.
all in how you work with them.
And I jokingly talked about how my post talked about AI is the best intern you ever had. I'm actually going to give credit where that's due. My post is quoting two clients of mine who said that those clients work in the AI space in communications roles, Jacqueline Carter and Jessica Onick. So you guys are the best. Love you. And what a wonderful statement you gave me for my content. But Libby, I could sit here and talk with you all day, but I want to be respectful of your time because you have to go off and do some more work that we will never see. So I will just ask one last question. Any other message that you want to share with folks that aspire to be in the place that you're in?
Yeah, and my PR training tells me to never leave this question unanswered. Always take this opportunity to answer this question. No, I mean, I think the biggest thing I would want folks as they're thinking about aspiring to, a chief communications officer role is be curious,
Mm,
right? You said like we are naturally curious, continue to be curious,
mm,
be ambitious.
mhm.
That is one that my current boss said to me. I told her I was doing this interview, and she said, don't be shy about how you were ambitious. I
Yeah.
had a vision for what I wanted this team to be. I sat down with her, I made the case, and we made it happen. I obviously had her support, and she gets it, and that's great. But she was like, don't shy away from the fact, we as women,
Yes.
particularly, just like we as communicators can be humble about what we produce and what we do or what we do that goes
Right.
unseen. We as women are often shy about being ambitious. So they be curious, be ambitious, and be a lifelong learner.
I got chills. Thank you, Libby, for this conversation. I did promise everybody I am going to do a follow up on that conversation about how to measure the immeasurable. So if you go to my website, taramcdonough.com, and you go to the bottom of the page, you can sign up for the Level Up emails. I send them out every 2 weeks. I promise I'm not going to overwhelm your inbox. With some extra insights that I get after I do these interviews, some more ideas I get inspired by, but they're too long to share here. So I just do a separate note on them to anybody who's interested in like being extra like I am and getting extra insights. So feel free to sign up for that on my website. And Libby, thank you so much for your time today. I know that the listeners here will get so much from this conversation. And if you listeners out there liked what you heard, if you have additional questions, if you want to know more, if you enjoyed this conversation, leave us a rating or a review. And also just shoot me a note. Tell me what you thought. I happen to know that I talk with Libby quite often. So I will be back in touch with her to let her know what you think too. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day. Until next time, keep advising. If you're interested in working with me to advance your work and your team's reputation as critical business advisors, never order takers, check out TaraMcDonough.com. Thanks for listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a rating or a review. It helps people find us, and we can't ignite a movement without sharing the message. See you next time, where we'll continue to do the work to elevate our field's reputation and elevate the careers of the people in it. I created Raise the Tide to help elevate our field and the women in it. It's part community, part coaching, part professional development, and part mentorship. It encompasses all of these things because it takes all of these things to rise in your career. I asked a few Raise the Tide crew members to share what their experiences have been like in the program, and here's what they had to say. What's one major impact Raise the Tide has had on you?
It's so important to have community across any part of our lives, and that's one way that Raise the Tide has had a major impact for me.
I'm at a time in my career where I'm looking to grow both from a business advisor and personally. And what I will say is I'm not necessarily getting what I need in terms of coaching and growth internally. And that's where Raise the Tide comes in.
Raise the Tide has given me the confidence to go and advocate for myself and never allow status quo and be always pushing for more and knowing your value and your worth and not being afraid to advocate for that.
If you're interested in this program, head on over to TaraMcDonough.com and complete the Raise the Tide form. A rising tide raises all ships, but we're not the ships. Together, we're the force of the tide, raising the ships for our entire industry.